Good morning, everybody. Let's get this show started. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to DYOR Live on the DYOR Media Network. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Striking here in the digital media world. Reddit gave me that name one day, and I'm keeping it. So I use it here in the crypto digital asset. And now with my guest today, I'm going to use the word fintech industry because everyone seems to have a nickname, and that one is mine. It is, it's Wednesday, May 31st. I just can't believe it's already the end of May in 2020. 21, 22, 20, that's right, 2023. We're moving along pretty quickly here in the year, and I'm bringing you a lot of good content this year. Been doing this show all week, actually all month, in the past couple of months as well, the most I can. We've had a lot of good subjects, as I say, we cover everything here for beginners into people that want to learn a little bit more and have a nice cup of coffee in the morning, listening to an interesting guest talk about the topics of the day. And as you could tell from the graphics I put out and the descriptions put out, and if you've heard me moan and complain for the past couple of months about regulation in the United States, you'll know that I'm no fan of what's going on. But it's not just that I'm not a fan of what's going on. It's that we need to get more information out to people in order to understand what's going on, but also to understand what could happen and what the possibilities are. And so today I have a guest from a person that I've met only via LinkedIn, and today, it seems like LinkedIn is now the new, once you're LinkedIn friends for more than 2 or 3 days, you're always like, hey, he's a friend of mine. And we just meet in person. I'll have Jimmie Lenz on and introduce him in a little bit here. But as we all know, as we get into the week here, I like to be happy and talk about things going on in crypto. The market seems to be strong, consolidating in an area in the high 20,000s in BTC right now, and optimism is starting to turn up a little bit, and it doesn't look like the really big manipulators in the market are really smoking us little guys right now, and that's a good thing because people are looking for the bull run again. And if you paid attention to my show on Monday, we had a guest on Anton Golub and Jason Myers of Audit Chain, and they spoke about the various things going on in the markets. But Anton had a great point in talking about shadow banking and the behind-the-scenes banking that happened during the FTX and Genesis. I'll just call it the scam era, when they were. The best way to describe it is buying a lot of Bitcoin on credit, and especially Solana on credit. And really pumping the price of their own tokens, which blew up their balance sheets at their bank or for their company, and the banks lent them more money, and financial institutions gave more money. They pumped the coins more, and they kept doing that until the credit ran out. And then, as we know, everything came to a crashing halt. But since that money and that free lending has disappeared, what money can replace that? And as we all know, Bitcoin's at what do we say right about now? $500 billion in market cap. In order for the price of it to really double and for the Bitcoin maxis out there, for it to really get going, a lot of money needs to come into the markets. And a lot of money needs to come into the markets via mostly institutional banks, financial service companies. We can also count on, if China is serious about opening up, we'll have a big retail presence also, but we'll also have institutional money coming from Asia again into Bitcoin. Or into the top token coin markets in general, and that will help bring a lot of liquidity into the market and give the ability for the price to really pump. That being said, they're not going to do that. People are not going to get into the markets, and companies are not going to get into the markets heavily they'll get into it in high risk and with speculation, or just to FOMO in. So at the country club, hedge fund boss number one can say to boss number two, hey, we're in that also. But for them to take it really seriously, there has to be a much more fair playground and better risk management, and the ability for lower level institution money managers to be able to justify their actions to the bosses. And that comes with fair playing rules and less risk in the market. And it comes with the ability for people to say, yes, this seems like fair. Nothing's going to be a scam. We're not going to get manipulated to death. And we'll be able to have a fair investment. Doesn't mean we're going to guaranteed to make money, but we're not going to lose all our money or have returns far negative than our shareholders or clients will put up with. And that's coming, but that only comes with regulation, and that comes with fair rules. And regulation comes in two ways. It comes from the market regulating itself, which it's doing a better job, in my opinion, regulating itself than people give it credit for. People do talk about, the fraud and the scams in the digital world, and that's true, but it's still dwarfed. The fraud and scams in the crypto world are dwarfed by the daily fraud at Visa and MasterCard. So we have a long way to go before it's truly a problem. We all know, if you pay attention to my show, Rugged, Ruined, and Wrecked, people will notice that even the small guys get wrecked out there, and that's no fun. As I say, there's 100 million 100 million teenagers and young 20s kids in Asia trying to turn $10 into $100 in crypto just to have a better monthly salary. If they get rug pulled, it's no fun. And if a hedge fund invests in a project, in a token, or not a token, but in a coin or a big fund with crypto, and it turns out it's an FTX-like Ponzi scheme, then nobody's happy there either. But fortunately, there'll be some suggestions on what to do, and today's guest has those suggestions. And some background before I bring Mr. Lenz on here. Since I haven't met him yet, I'll call him Mr. Lenz. I found today's guest by watching. I believe it was the House Financial Services Committee. It has a longer name, but I don't know what it is. And a colleague of his, Lee Reiners, was testifying on behalf. I'll say on behalf of Elizabeth Warren, but in front of the committee. And so I searched out Lee to see what he was up to. And I came across Lee's role at Duke, which led me to Jimmie's role at Duke. And it's really an opposites attract point here. And so while Lee was on screen and became crypto's most hated person in America for 20 minutes, his colleague Lee at Duke University is the opposite of that and has been in fintech his whole life. And promotes responsible use of technology, and not only that, but teaches and educates people in that sphere. And so that's how I came about that. And upon researching Lee's postings and his papers, I said this is probably a good idea to have him on the show. And so with that, I'm going to bring. Let's see if I can do this right the first time. Lee onto the show.
Now you're bringing Jimmie onto the show.
Oh, sorry. Well, welcome, Jimmie.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate you taking the time to come into my virtual studio here. As I tell people, normally I'm in Chicago, today broadcasting from Toronto, and I assume you're at Duke University.
I am here in Durham, North Carolina.
Oh, one of my cousins went to Duke, and I went to Purdue, and we had a tough time as Purdue never did well in the Final Four, and Duke tends to do well, and so it was always stressful.
Duke tends to do pretty well in the Final Four.
Yeah,
it's a fun place to be. It's a great area of the country, first of all. But Duke is a really nice place to be. It's a fun institution to work at.
It is, and apparently it's on the leading edge now of fintech innovation and in that whole area. And just for the viewers that are watching live, but also on the replay. Jimmie is the executive director of the Pratt School of Engineering at Duke University, and participates in not only in the activities at Duke, but Duke has an arm in Washington D.C. Duke in D.C. that does their Washington, D.C. government relations and activities there. And apparently, as best I can, don't let me put words in your mouth, but you're helping that group out by trying to promote the ideas and opinions you have for yourself, and also as a representative of Duke in Washington, D.C. for that.
That is correct. I do spend some time up at Duke in DC. I run two of the graduate programs here at the engineering school, the Master of Engineering in Financial Technology and the Master of Engineering in Cybersecurity. And as you mentioned, I've been doing this for basically all my life. I was in industry though, so I was actually a practitioner for almost 3 decades. I came up kind of on the trading side of things, primarily algorithmic and electronic trading, and had the opportunity to serve as a senior executive for several firms. And it's been quite a whirlwind. And so and I was lucky. I came up. I'm kind of if you ever read Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers, I kind of fit into there a little bit. I just happened to be right place, right time. And as computational power ramped up, I was in an area that could take advantage of that. And so it's been a lot of fun. And now working at the university, so I've been at Duke. I'm in my 4th year there, and I was brought on to start the Master of Engineering in Fintech. And I've been fascinated with digital assets for way before I came to Duke. I probably started working in that space in around 2014, 2015. Right. And I'm seeing a lot of things that are going on in that space that, and I actually run a lab at Duke too, the Digital Asset Research and Engineering Collaborative. We've published several papers on kind of the environment, the digital asset environment. I would encourage people to stop thinking of digital assets as terribly unique. Think about them in terms of other economics, and it works much better. It really does. It fits into an ecosystem, unique ecosystem, but it fits into an ecosystem. But I have had an opportunity to go up to Lee and I co-wrote an op-ed that was published in American Banker about a month ago on the idea of a federal sandbox. And one of the things that I am dismayed about is the fact that the United States used to be just an engine of innovation. Innovation, yep. If it was going to happen for the last 100 years, it was going to happen in the United States. The current environment, I would say the last 5 to 10 years has really had, I think, a chilling effect on innovation here in the United States. And while we still have the people who want to do those kinds of things, I don't think the environment is very friendly, in particular the regulatory environment, and I would say the unchecked regulatory environment, because it's not checked anymore.
No, it's not. And if give me a second here, what I like to say is that while I guess the best way to say it is while we've been going along here in crypto with ambiguous, not crypto, but all the digital assets, ambiguous or vague or gray or just lack of framework to operate in. It was that executive order that came out from the president and then Gary Gensler's appointment in 2021 that really changed the playing field. I mean, we all know that Ripple has been on the chopping block for a while, and they've been successfully pushing back. And we could see some defining court rulings out of that may change or bind the SEC's hands, which would be good. But one of the things that we haven't seen is we haven't seen any real congressional legislative action other than committee hearings with people beating their chests saying great, or this is awful, or this is great. And we're getting a little confused. And so your op-ed that you wrote with Lee, it kind of expanded on the ideas that some states are trying to do in much smaller markets. And explain to us like what a sandbox is, because I understand my viewers are newer. What a sandbox is, and how, as a federal operation or entity like that, it could help spur that innovation that you said is not happening in this area.
Yeah, it's so Sandbox is an interesting concept. It's basically for the devs out there, it's a test environment. And it allows you to develop new products and to roll them out on a limited basis under certain different guidelines, but it tends to shield you from regulatory action and things like that while you're in this development stage, and it allows you to roll it out to users on a limited basis. And so it's a really, really nice place for developers and innovators to work within and to develop products that can be tested in an environment, in a regular environment, and get all that feedback. And that's what we always want, is feedback. What are the results of my tests that I'm running? And this is what allows you to do this. The thing about fintech is, and there are about a dozen states now, including North Carolina, where I'm sitting, that have started fintech sandboxes. The problem is no fintech company really operates just under state law. They all operate under federal law. And so one of the ideas has been this idea of a federal sandbox. And this isn't unique to Lee and I. Lee and I have copied this from a couple of different sources. They have one in the UK. They have one in the EU. They have one in the Middle East. So we're kind of a little bit late to the party. But it's funny because Congressman Patrick McHenry from North Carolina actually floated this idea about 6 or 7 years ago, and it went nowhere. But he wrote a very comprehensive bill, and fortunately, he is now the chairman of the House Financial Services Committee. We're in a fairly new Congress. They've been seated for about 5 months, and we have seen some activity from this new Congress in the space. And so I am very, very hopeful that we do see this going forward. And we were up in DC last week doing a summit with some folks from the Hill and a bunch of people from industry, a few academics. And we were discussing this idea of a federal sandbox that Lee and I had penned the article on. And as you mentioned, Lee and I do not see eye to eye on very much. We take opposite sides on pretty much everything, but even he and I could get together on this idea. So if he and I can get together, certainly this bipartisan Congress should be able to get together on it.
I got to tell you, from watching what goes on in the Hill, if they can get together on any single topic, I'll be happy. But if they can get together on one that has got controversy attached to it, like digital assets, I'll be even more surprised. But we all know something needs to happen, and so maybe the right push and the right lobbying effort to counteract big banks of the world, their lobbying effort, we could see some movement on this.
Well, that's the thing that I'm going to try to bring up, and this isn't a one and done type thing. I will continue to speak with people on the Hill. Those who will listen, because I do think this is really, really important. People forget that almost everything that we've seen in fintech, almost every unique innovation, it didn't come out from the big banks. All right, big banks have not rolled this stuff out. Who rolled this stuff out? Community banks,
right?
Credit unions, independent companies. I mean, you think about things that are just normal now. Online banking, was that rolled out by one of the big banks? Absolutely not.
Nope.
We think about online account access. Was that rolled out by a big bank? Nope. How about online mortgages? There was this little company called Quicken that really brought that to pass. And now, banks that make less than half of the mortgages in America. And so it's benefited the consumer. Access is much better, right? And we always hear about banking access. Well, if you want banking access, allow fintech firms to start operating, and not only allow them, incentivize them. Here in the United States, to patent something, patenting things is very hard. You can't patent software anymore, right, Alice? Nope. Really? You can patent a process that software is part of, but you can't patent software. And this is a guess, okay? But I'm guessing to patent something, and I've always been in corporations that paid for my patents, but I'm guessing about $50,000 in total fees, in that neighborhood, $30,000 to $50,000 or something.
In a long period of your life.
Yeah, and other countries actually pay you to patent things. Go to China, they actually pay you to patent things. It's a totally different concept, and so why are we not in that kind of place? And I'm not saying pay everybody for every patent, but incentivizing people to innovate here in the United States, because what we're seeing now is people taking overt action to go other places. Other places are certainly wooing Americans to go and develop overseas. We should not have that.
Right.
I'm, as I said, dismayed.
So the idea of the sandbox, is it receptive? Are there receptive ears to that?
Yes, I would say I've spoken with several people on the Hill. People are receptive to it. Of course, Patrick McHenry's office is very receptive since he penned it. There are, I would say, a number of people. I haven't had anybody say this is a terrible idea, and not that any politician would probably ever use those kinds of definitives. But I haven't had the feeling that anyone was going down that path of thinking, no, this is just a terrible idea. And as I said, we already have about a dozen states that have done this. And if states have taken the action to do it, well, then probably their legislators are feeling the same way. So I'm cautiously optimistic about something like this occurring. And I think I'm not a lawyer, but I believe that this would not have to be, there wouldn't have to be a bill. I think Congress could actually just appropriate the money to do this without a separate bill. At least that's what I'm told by lawyer friends. And so I think that Congress does have the power to do this. I think, if I were a regulator, if I was wearing that hat today, I would think this would be the greatest thing in the world. I mean, what do you always hear from regulators? I mean, when something goes wrong, wow, we never saw that coming.
Right.
Okay, here's your chance to see it coming. Here's a chance to see it as it's developed. I mean, what more can you ask for?
Well, so in your discussions, also, what ideas have you guys come up with, or have you seen others come up with that just flat out received nothing, no response from the Hill? What ideas are just not working?
I mean, anything that has to do strictly with digital assets is a non-starter. I mean, it's become such a bipartisan issue, and I can't figure it out. But you go to Capitol Hill, macaroni and cheese is a bipartisan issue. I mean, everything is a bipartisan issue. But it seems like anything that is digital asset focused is very difficult. It's really challenging. And again, to me, there is so much promise there in the digital asset space. As I said, I've been working in that area. I teach a blockchain class. We have an advanced blockchain class. We have 2 Web3 classes. I mean, we do a lot in the and that's just in the engineering school at Duke. We're doing a lot. We have the Digital Asset Research and Engineering Collaborative, Digital Assets at Duke. The conferences that we do. I mean, we do a lot in the space, and so we see a lot of promise there. In fact, we just had a couple of students get funded by a venture capital firm that are doing stuff not in the digital asset space, but in the blockchain space. So it's something people see and students see a lot of promise in. But from the Hill, I don't think we're seeing quite the same kind of universal reception, unfortunately.
All right. I just quickly brought up a picture of your recent graduation of one of your the tweet you put out.
Yeah, thanks.
And it's I have to say, when you look through the job recruitment boards, is that anyone with that type of degree attached to their resume or CV is highly sought after right now, and the market is just absorbing these skills like crazy right now. It really is amazing.
It's a great market for students with these kinds of skills. It's interesting. The last year or so, we've seen recruiters come in from, I would say, fairly uncharacteristic kind of industries. Healthcare, for instance. We've had a couple of recruiters come in and trying to recruit students into healthcare, mainly in quantitative roles, healthcare analytics and those kinds of things. But a lot of them go to work in the very much fintech space and kind of traditional finance spaces in quant roles. So there is a lot of that going on. I have just awesome students.
Michael Kutro and Michael
Mike Lou. Yeah.
Mike Lou. Yes.
Yeah. Mike, the Mikes. Yeah. The Mikes started their company Validity ID, and it's rocking. Maven Capital is who has financed them out of California, and so they're off and running, which is just awesome to see. I actually have another group of students, we haven't announced it yet, that just received funding too, and so that story will be coming out probably in the next week or two, which is really cool. I mean, as a professor, one of the things that you always want to see is your students go out and do really, really cool things, and they're going to work at great places. But I was always of the mind that there would be, a few students in every class that would decide, I'm striking out on my own. I want to go out and start my own company. And now we have it. And it's like, that's awesome.
That's it's good. It must be. I've done a lot of things in my life, but being a teacher of actual students is not one of them. It must be very satisfying to see something that you've been working on and they actually go out and immediately use those skills in the field.
It's the best. It really is. It's a lot of fun. I joke with people. I was very fortunate. I got my master's and my doctorate from Washington University in St. Louis, but I was always in industry. And I always joke with people that, now I feel like I'm using my education for good, maybe a greater good. That's probably a better way to put it, a greater good. And doing that, but yeah, seeing your students go on to do these kinds of things, to work at some of these companies, to create new things. I mean, that's what I think every professor dreams about.
What these students, when I went to school and when you went to school, there were no programs in these types of degrees. And even the programs that are coming out now are newer and evolving as the markets evolve here and new information and new products come out. The students that are graduating your master's programs right now, what did they start in? What's on average, what's their base degree in?
Their undergraduate degrees, applied mathematics. Most of them are double majored, applied math and computer science, applied math statistics, applied math economics, those kinds of, probably about 40% of the current class have applied mathematics, undergraduate degrees, and most of them are double majored. And after that, computer science, engineering, economics, econometrics. Right. So all quantitative fields for the most part. They're coming from, I don't know how many schools, and we had a lot of applications this year. Hundreds of schools. But probably our biggest schools right now are the University of California schools. We have a lot of applications. A lot of students come from UCs, which are awesome schools. UW out in Seattle. But we have a lot from the East Coast too. The normal schools that you would think of, including Duke.
Right.
And so it's a lot of fun. But yeah, they come from quantitative backgrounds. And one of the reasons that I think that our program is so popular all over the world, because most of our students are international, one of the reasons I think is we're in an engineering school. So if you look at most fintech programs, they're not in engineering schools. Right. They're in business schools. And business schools, tend to be much more theoretical, whereas engineering schools, we build things.
You have a lab. You have lab class. It's
exactly.
We're not in the wind tunnel. We're in the computer code, figuring out the next blockchain.
That's exactly. Everything is hands-on. Every class is hands-on, and students really, who have these quantitative backgrounds are saying, okay, so how do I apply this? And that's what happens. They come to the engineering school, and we're pretty much every class are hands-on. I mean, even in my intro blockchain class, by the second or third class, you are already building things. And these are people who may have had some exposure to blockchain, may have not had any, and by the end of the course, you're building ERC20 tokens. You're using, some simple smart contracts on Gnosis and things like that.
Oh, that's where Pepe came from.
Yeah. So it's fun. It's fun to be able to teach students and see them doing these kinds of things and going off on their own to create new things.
It most certainly is, and you got your start in Washington, or not Washington, at Washington University in St. Louis. Hopefully my son will have a similar track. He's at St. Louis University.
Sure. Down the street.
In their engineering program. So
awesome. I mean, definitely encourage. I mean, it's, engineering right now, I tell people all the time that I really do believe engineering schools are what business schools were 30 years ago.
Yep.
Business schools, I think, have had their time in the sun. It's not like they're going anyplace, but they've had their time in the sun. And you see some of their more popular courses of study are much more quantitative. The MSs, Master of Science in quantitative things. The WashU has been was great. As I said, I was at the business school there, the Olin School of Business, which was fantastic. Still have a lot of friends there. SLU, great school. St. Louis as a whole is a real university-oriented town. I mean, you have University of Missouri at St. Louis, you have WashU, you have SLU. I mean, there are a lot of universities for a relatively small town these days.
That's true.
But it's fun. It's fun to go to those kinds of places.
Well, as I say, the business. You made a good point about business schools versus engineering schools. I went to Purdue for engineering, and I immediately got a summer job working on in the commodities trading exchange in New York City in the old World Trade Centers. So I switched my major. But back then was the rise of the business school, as I call it, because of the Jack Welch effect. When people, my personal opinion is Jack Welch ruined corporate America by focusing on corporate finance rather than a better product. And so business schools took off, teaching people how to make money by playing tricks with their books rather than making better products. And so now you see the reversal of that. They've pretty much done everything they can. The regulators have clamped down on what to do with the books. You still see bank fails anyway. Now, and so with new products, you see, all right, we need more people that are skilled in that. So let's get people trained up in that. And that I would echo your sentiments on that.
Well, I think if you look at some of the what I would call the leading edge financial services firms, Goldman Sachs. I know this is like a couple of years ago, they advertised hiring their 10,000th engineer. Just to give you some perspective. So I'm guessing here a little bit, but I think about a third of our undergraduate engineers go to work directly in financial services companies. Right. Because those skills are really valued. You're learning a lot of math, you're learning a lot of computer science, things like that, but it's all applied.
Well, what bank has the most amount of blockchain patents? Bank of America.
Bank of America.
A recent article in I think it was American Banker talked about how they're on record as having the most patents. Obviously, other companies could have shadow companies getting the patents and stuff. But in JP Morgan, like I say, is no slouch. Their internal blockchain system, Onyx, has run $1 trillion in tokenized assets through it since its start in 2020. They have this is great. They have an Ethereum-based blockchain. They have an internal exchange, and they have an internal token to run all that. Do we hear anything from the SEC about it at all? Nothing. Nada.
Yeah. I mean, no, you're spot on. I mean, JP Morgan has done a lot. In fact, we have students working at Onyx, which is kind of cool. We are seeing, I think, this idea of tokenization is starting to bubble up a lot more. You're starting to hear, Larry Fink talk about it on a regular basis. You're starting to hear, some of the other companies say, this is the future is tokenization. So I think we are going to see more of that practical blockchain. And let's face it, I mean, JP Morgan, they have a lot of smart guys there. They know how to do things. And so I would say, the way that they're probably organizing things like Onyx is, I'm sure that they've dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's in that. But as you said, they are quietly doing a lot of stuff in this space.
Full disclosure, my show is sponsored by this company behind me, Audit Chain. And what Audit Chain does is they have it's a lot of complicated stuff, but get down to it, they have software that goes through SEC filings and finds where people are not compliant with their various taxonomies. whether it's the US GAAP, whether it's the European version, or and so forth. And they find a lot of errors in that. But I do a show on that with them also, and we talk about these things. We talk about what's going on with the markets, what's going on with that. And in Onyx, and those internal things came up because the idea is that banks are huger now than they were in the 90s. They want to keep growing. Their executive team is incentivized to keep growing by their pay structures. And so they're coming out with new products. And when I complained about the SEC not, I obviously don't know the regulatory climate about internal products like that, but about JP Morgan running that, it just feels like they're trying to create everything and then use their lobbying power to push out the little guys, and then eventually unveil, say, hey, trust us banks with all of this. Let's not let DeFi and other people have money for the market opportunities. We'll handle it all. Congress, why don't you just put it all in our hands and eventually give the SEC full control over it? That's my personal feeling of what's going on, but it's echoed by a lot of others.
I would tend to agree with you. But I would frame it a little bit differently. I think that the vast majority of regulation has always been enacted for that purpose. It was never enacted for the protection of consumers. That's a misnomer.
Right.
It's
totally
for the protection of the entrenched players. And it always has been. I mean, and it goes way beyond banking. I mean, it's most industries.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
We've had this massive consolidation, right, of pretty much every industry. There's very little competition. I mean, how many people can you buy power from? How many flights can you take from a certain airport to another destination? How many, phones? There you go. I mean, the amount of consolidation, and a lot of that is to protect the entrenched players. I mean, we see it over and over again. And so I think, and this has been the case for a long time. And that's why we've seen, I think, some unique things in the fintech space, places like Rocket Mortgage. So Rocket's not a bank, right? And they had to take a very different tack. SoFi is another great example, I think. They were basically refinancing student loans at much lower rates with much higher, and the loans are much higher quality. Now there are some reasons for that, but they're not. But they didn't operate as a bank, right? They operated in a very, very different kind of area. And so fintech folks are very creative. I mean, they've done, I think, a fantastic job in, I won't say getting around the rules, but being able to facilitate things that, so that they weren't stopped in their tracks by, the entrenched players. And that will, I hopefully, continue to happen, because those have brought us some just life-changing tools that we use every day and we don't even think about. And so I'm always out there encouraging fintech. I think it's the greatest thing that we've had. I've lived that life for my whole career. I think there are a lot of legislators out there that forget that every time they do something, it was probably brought to them by a small guy, not the big guys. The Elizabeth Warrens of the world and people like that. I think they forgot that. And honestly, they are so scared by anything that approaches innovation. We're lucky that we've already invented fire.
I can't believe the regulatory climate that would exist if they're trying to invent fire now.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have a lot of time left on our show today, but I want to go through a couple of things that you've brought up in public. One of the things you spoke about, you said gets a lot of traction at trade shows or conferences, is the concept of security or commodity. Why do digital assets have to be either? Could you expand on that?
This is like the Middle Ages argument over how many angels could dance on the head of a pin, right? I mean, why does it have to be either? We're this security or commodity thing, and I applaud the House Financial Services Committee at the hearing that they had Gary Gensler at, and they were insisting, answer the question. You've said it, answer the question. But I would say, why does it have to be either? Yeah, there is no reason. these laws are almost 100 years old now that define what a security is, right? That Howey is 75 years old, and it defined, what an equity was. Are those still pertinent? Those were found at a time when most people didn't have telephones. A good amount of people didn't have electricity or running water in their homes. And so the environment that we live in today wasn't even imagined then. Are these still pertinent for every asset class there is? Absolutely not. Why can't there be and so I've been asked, well, do we need to create a new regulator? No, we do not need to create a new regulator. We have over 70 regulators in the equity space alone. In the UK, they have one. Let's see what we could do to actually, if we're going to start consolidating and putting things together, how about let's starting there?
Right. That's a great.
I will volunteer. I will help that.
Note for future show topic. What was the other thing? I wanted to ask you a question about the digital assets have to be either. Oh yeah, that my follow-up question was if they're not either one of those, what are they? Just their own thing, or are they just another product like everything else in the world?
Yeah. So why not? Why not their own thing? I mean, we have bonds that are unique. We have equities that are unique. We have derivatives that operate in a unique way. Why not something new? I mean, why does it have to be either? I think these can be treated as unique asset classes, just like we treat a lot of other things as in a unique asset class way. Why not treat these as unique assets? Now, that said, there do need to be some parameters. As we all know, there are a lot of different kinds of digital assets, from stable coins on one end of the spectrum to, I don't know, where the spectrum doesn't even end on the other side, goes to infinity, I think. But there are very, very different parameters. And could you categorize things in such a way that it would be well understood, that it would fit some of the definitions that we have today? Absolutely. Why can't a stable coin be regulated in a similar way, but in a similar way as, say, a money market mutual fund, because they're the same thing.
Exactly.
Essentially, they're so similar. Why not start treating them? And so to call yourself a stable coin, just like to call yourself a money market fund, you have to fit into certain parameters. Why not?
I've been following the stablecoin thing for the past couple of months here. I've been unsure of why the government, obviously the federal government, thinks they can regulate everything because of interstate commerce clause.
Right.
But if I were to say I have 1 million of these phones and each one I'm assigning a value of $1 to it, and I'll just maintain that value, that's up to the market to barter with me to whether I can maintain that or not. And I'm unsure why does the government even care if stable coins work or not, if their whole thing is, well, fiat's the real dollar? And it doesn't, to me, seem to be a consumer protection thing. Like, well, we don't want people to lose their money from scams. There's already rules for fraud. There's rules against Ponzi schemes. There's rules against, negligence in financial management and all that type of stuff. But regulation of stable coins seems to me that they're trying to regulate something that I have a right to say, this is worth $1. No matter what you say.
So I would agree with you if they didn't use a nomenclature like stable coins, that they said we are X, we are Y. But when you start using an overarching term like stablecoin should mean something, right? Oh, we're a stablecoin. Okay, I'm going to start a new stablecoin. It should mean something. If you just want to say, hey, we're Tether, or we're USDC, or we're this or we're that, that's fine. But when you start calling yourself a stable coin, you've voluntarily put yourself into a category. And so the category should mean something, I think, right. In that respect. The other thing I would say about stable coins, in particular here in the United States, is we are very, very concerned about the US dollar losing its global reserve, status.
Right.
This is one of the best ways in the world to keep that global reserve status. Do we really want stable coins denominated in another currency? Absolutely not. Let's keep them in USDC as long as we can. And that will, again, go and reinforce that idea. So I think by doing this and doing it with in a similar way, not the same, but a similar way as money market funds, we would institute the same, that same sort of belief.
Well, it's like I like to say, it's my opinion, but it's not pervasive. It's obvious when looking at the federal budget is that we support the U.S. dollar dominance with the our continued reliance on the petrochemical industry around the world, and of course our great military force that's in every country around the world, basically enforcing it. And we all know the history says is that the currency of the world was the currency of the largest army at the time, and so while there's a lot of, again, of my opinion here about this, that people talk about BRICS and this and trading with it. Brazil just bought some oil from China in the Chinese currency and all that, and they make a big deal about it. People forget the vast size of the global economy, and in the amount of dollars transactions done in dollars. It's everything you can think of, and even the digital asset and cryptocurrency market. Like I like to tell people, my analogy is to really get a scope on how early we are in this. The whole market cap of all of the tradable coins and tokens in the world right now is less than the value of the real estate of Manhattan.
Yeah, that's a great perspective.
And people are like, these people that spend their whole life in Bitcoin and like, oh, it's the greatest thing ever. Okay, it could be great, but let's just understand where we are right now. And where we are right now is at the beginning of an industry that is still trying to feel itself out. Bitcoin's 14, 15 years old, and it's still like, where do we go from here? And it's small. And there's, does the real estate market in Manhattan get nearly as much press or regulatory oversight as the digital markets? And the answer is no. Obviously, property law is long established. That's not a great analogy, but the point is we're still very early. And like my example of fraud in these markets is still less than what Visa deals with on a daily basis. And so we're small, we're early, and it is up to us and people like you going to Washington, D.C. and trying to help with the rules. And as much as I don't like to say it, people like Lee, your colleague Lee, also. But a good law comes from good debate, and bad law comes from people driving their own ideology through. And so when you have people on both sides of an argument coming together to say that no, this is going to happen, as you tweeted. Let's see, no, not security. I had this teed up to be nice and smooth comment here. Attention everyone, this isn't going away. And it was providing access to crypto in a safe way is also part of our value proposition, and we're continuing to do that. And it was you forwarded an article about the advancement of crypto and that type of stuff. And so none of this is going away. Right. And having people from both sides of the aisle or viewpoint come together and say, all right, we know it's not going away. We can't ban it. We can't say it's the most awesome thing and everyone switch to it. But we need to come up with the middle and get those ideas to legislators and regulators is a great thing. And as we wrap up the show here today, Jimmie, what's next on the legislative front? Do you have some DC conferences coming up? Do you have any big?
Stay tuned about. There's going to be. I think there's going to be a few things. Stablecoin legislation's coming up soon. The Sandbox legislation will likely be reintroduced very soon. We're going to see, I think, a lot more activity from this House Financial Services Committee. I mean, they formed the first digital asset subcommittee. They have the first fintech subcommittee. So there's I think going to be a lot out of this Congress on fintech and digital assets. So I would definitely stay tuned. And who knows? We'll see what happens next. But they are having a lot of hearings, and so I expect that we will see quite a bit more coming out of some of those hearings. You never know. Maybe Lee will be back up there. Who knows?
God is our witness. What's next for you in speaking engagements? Where will we see you appearing next?
You will see me in about a week and a half. I will be at University of California at Berkeley at their fintech conference. I will be giving a keynote there. I'm really excited by that. That'll be that should be a lot of fun, and that'll be, like I say, just in about a week and a half. So that's my next speaking engagement. We will of course continue the Coffee and Crypto podcast, and that comes out about every 2 weeks. Then beyond that, just stay tuned, I would say.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Like I say on these morning shows, we don't get a lot of live viewers, but I hit it on the replay and I put things out to social media to get key points across, things that people might get educated from and might get entertained from. I try to do both. Jimmie, if you do have spare time, look up our show, Rugged, Ruined, and Wrecked. You might...
Absolutely.
It's usually 10 minutes of things going wrong in crypto, and it's always entertaining. And we try to put out a show about once a month about it, just to lighten up the mood here. But thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to do this. Good luck to your students that are coming on. I'm guessing you'll have some summer classes, or are you off?
So they have required internships all summer, and so several of them are working at some really cool blockchain companies. Truck Coin Swap, which I'm associated with. We have a few there. We have a few at actually a number at Depository Trust Company. We have a number at Rain Insurance. They're at all kinds of places all over. They're taking roles. So they have required internships this summer. So they will be spending a few hundred hours in their internships, and then it's back to class in August.
All right, well, I wrap this up. Stick with me till its end. Like I said, everyone, thank you for joining in. We'll be back Friday with tax strategy, or not tax strategy, but tax education. Many of you are repeatedly told, especially by me, make sure you pay your taxes on this, because the IRS is hiring chain analysis companies to figure it all out, and they will find you. And if you don't check that box that says I've owned crypto, then you will be breaking the law. So we're going to have some good advice from a gentleman named Taylor on Friday about that at the same time. And then next week, it will likely be dark as I'm traveling back to Chicago and getting some personal things done. But I can't stay away with this. I love bringing new guests to everybody. But once again, as I tell everybody, we're looking forward to seeing you there. See you on the show Friday. And once again, Jimmie Lenz, Executive Director of the Duke University Pratt School of Engineering, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And everybody, we'll see you Friday, so be there.